We're diving into a story that's really about two completely different worlds colliding at one of India's biggest, most trusted companies, Tata Consultancy Services. On one side, you have the story of incredible, record-breaking success, and on the other, some deeply disturbing allegations that are forcing everyone to ask some very hard questions. Let's get into it.
So first, let's look at the success story. This number right here, 267,021 crore rupees. That's over 30 billion US dollars in revenue for just 1 year. This isn't just good, it's a sign of a global titan operating at the very peak of its powers. But I want you to hold on to that image of success because what comes next is a total whiplash. Right as the champagne corks were flying for their financial wins, this headline just dropped like a bomb. The contrast is just jarring. So the big question is, how can these two realities exist inside the very same company at the very same time? One of mind-blowing profit, and the other of what sounds like a profound betrayal of trust. Let's break it down.
Okay, so first, let's really zoom in on that picture of success. This is the story TCS was telling the world, a story of a company that was not just winning, but absolutely dominating the global IT industry.
It all came together on April 9th, 2026. TCS puts out this press release with its latest financial results. And by every single metric, it was a spectacular year, just full of major achievements and strategic victories.
And when you dig into the numbers, it's pretty staggering. Revenue was huge. Their profit margins, the best they'd seen in 4 years. They booked almost $41 billion in new deals. And they were making a huge push into AI, already pulling in over $2.3 billion a year from it. The message couldn't be clearer. TCS was an unstoppable machine.
And here you have it, straight from the CEO. He's talking about growth, mega deals, and their powerful AI-driven future. This was the official story, the public face of the company. But just 1 week after these words were published, a very, very different story started to come to light.
And that's where our focus shifts completely, moving away from the polished corporate headquarters to a single office building, where the first public cracks in this perfect image started to appear.
So get this, just 7 days after that glowing financial report, the TCS office in the city of Nashik is just shut down, abruptly. Employees were told to start working from home, no clear end date. This wasn't some planned restructuring, it felt like an emergency move.
Which, of course, raises the big question, right? In a year where you're making record profits and expanding everywhere, why would you suddenly shutter an entire office? Well, the answer wasn't going to be found in a press release. It was buried in police files.
It turns out the reason for the shutdown was a scandal that had apparently been festering for years, hidden just below the everyday surface of corporate life.
Now, this timeline is so important because it shows this wasn't just a one-time incident. The alleged misconduct goes all the way back to 2022. Things got so bad that in February 2026, police got a tip-off about notorious acts happening there. A tip so serious they launched a 40-day undercover operation, putting female officers inside, posing as staff, to see what was really going on. By March, the first official police report was filed, and that's when the floodgates really opened.
And the allegations themselves are just awful. We're talking about at least 8 women and 1 man who came forward. They described a pattern of sexual and mental harassment, stalking, and then it gets even stranger. Being forced to eat certain foods against their will, being coerced into specific religious practices, and even, in some cases, alleged attempts at forced religious conversion.
And this is where the story gets even darker. You have to ask, well, where was HR? What about the systems meant to prevent this? Well, according to the accusations, the very system designed to protect people was broken. An HR manager, who is actually on the company's anti-harassment committee, is accused of taking in at least 78 emails and chats with complaints, and then just burying them, essentially silencing the victims.
And that brings us to this number, 9. That's how many separate FIRs, or First Information Reports, have been filed with the police. This isn't one person's story or a misunderstanding. This is a collection of formal legal complaints.
Okay, so once these allegations hit the public, the response from law enforcement, the government, and of course the company itself started to roll out.
And you can see just how seriously everyone is taking this. The local police formed a special investigation team. 8 employees, including team leaders and that HR manager, were arrested. TCS immediately suspended them and kicked off its own high-level internal probe, led by the COO. And on top of all that, the National Women's Commission launched its own separate investigation.
The statement from the very top of the Tata Empire, TCS's parent company, was swift and strong. The chairman himself called the allegations anguishing and made it clear that the group has a zero-tolerance policy, promising that they would take strict action.
But here's where we see a really interesting tension. On one side, you have the corporate response. TCS says, we have a zero-tolerance policy and we acted fast as soon as we knew. But on the other side, you have an employee union, Knights, and they're saying, whoa, not so fast. An internal investigation isn't enough. They are demanding a full nationwide audit of the company's anti-harassment systems, which suggests they think this could be a much bigger, more systemic problem.
And that really gets to the core of it, you know? This is no longer just about what happened in one office in Nashik. This has become about the potential collapse of trust in a company that, for decades, has been a pillar of stability and safety.
This quote from India Today just nails it. For generations of people in India, getting a job at TCS was it. It was the gold standard. A secure, respectable career, a brand that entire families put their faith in. And now, the Nashik scandal is threatening to shatter that whole perception. So ultimately, this whole story forces us to ask some really uncomfortable questions. Do these corporate zero-tolerance policies actually mean anything on the ground? And in a company with hundreds of thousands of employees, can you really guarantee people's safety, especially when the very people meant to be the guardians are the ones being accused? And that leaves us with this final, lingering thought. What we're seeing here is this huge clash between the polished, perfect image of corporate success and the ugly, painful reality of what was allegedly going on behind closed doors. The investigations are far from over, but the big question is, which side of TCS is going to define its future? The record profits or the broken trust?